Hey, hi. Would you like to have the powers of a spider? To be able to walk on walls? To shoot with spider web? To be a hopeful hero? Today we will talk about the movie Spider-Man 1. With you as best movie. Let's get started. Take care, there are spoilers in this video. Peter Parker, because he's late for the bus, runs after him. The driver notices him and stops the bus and Peter climbs. Peter goes to look for a place, but someone hinders him and he falls down. The bus arrives at its destination. Peter Parker visit a genetics laboratory with their high school class. Mary Jane waved to her friends, but Peter thought she was addressing him. He feels ashamed. Harry Osborn comes to school with his car and his father, driven by his own driver. Peter and Harry, along with the class, enter the genetics laboratory. Peter, interested in the trip to the genetics lab, wants to take some pictures of the spiders in the lab, for the school newspaper. But the hooligans in the class don't allow him to take pictures of spiders. Harry tries to start talking to Mary, telling her how horrible the spiders are, but she tells him that they are very interesting and beautiful creatures. Harry tells her some information Peter told her on spiders. The guide tells the students that the scientists have done various experiments on spiders and created a new guy called super spiders who must count B15. Mary Jane notices that they are counted only 14 and that one spider is not, and the guide believes that scientists are now experimenting with one of them. While taking photos in the laboratory, Peter is bitten on the hand by a genetically engineered super spider, and he looks at the bite and sees that it flushes but does not pay much attention to it. Meanwhile, Norman Osborn, Harry's father, tries to keep his company's military contract from a rival company, personally experimenting with his company's new but unstable chemical vapors, which increase performance, to increase his speed, strength, and endurance. While Peter's aunt named May prepares the meal, Peter arrives home and tells his aunt that he is not feeling well and that he is tired and not hungry. His uncle Ben asks him what happened, and Peter says he's just super tired and wants to rest. Peter arrives in the room and feeling very sick and weak, he starts to make him dizzy and falls down fainting, due to the bite from the super spider in the laboratory. The bite on his hand swelled enormously. Norman Osborn talks to his assistant and tells him that he wants to try the experiment on himself. The assistant tells him that it is very dangerous, but it helps him prepare for the experiment anyway. Norman is in a sealed room where his assistant releases a green gas into the room. Norman starts to react strangely because of the green gas. The assistant cancels the experiment and extracts all the gas from there. Opening the door, he sees that Norman does not answer his words. Norman opens his eyes and grabs the assistant by the neck, and throws him with magnificent power, where the assistant loses his life. When Peter wakes up in the morning wanting to put on his glasses, he notices that his vision has been corrected and he already sees nothing through his glasses and understands that he no longer needs them. Peter, looking in the mirror, sees that his body has changed enormously, so that muscles have appeared on him, which Peter did not have before. His aunt asks him to see some changes after resting, and Peter tells him that some huge changes have occurred. Peter leaves the house and promises Uncle Ben that he will help him with the work at home. He sees how Mary Jane, who lives next to him, our neighbors, is scolded by his father. He follows her when she leaves for school, wants to talk to her but is not received when Mary Jane gets in a car. Peter notices that the bus is leaving without him. He hates the bus, asking him to stop, accidentally touches a paper poster on the bus that sticks to his hand. Harry finds his father unconscious in his office, where he tells him that he doesn't remember anything that happened to him, that he fainted. The assistants come to his office and tell Norman that an assistant was found dead in the lab and that the suit and flying saucer were stolen. Peter, having lunch at school, sees Mary Jane slipping and almost falling, but Peter catches her and catches all her food without falling on the ground. He noticed that he appeared him a magnificent reaction. Sitting on the chair, he sees that the fork is stuck to his hand. He tries to peel it off but sees that it is glued to a spider web coming out of his wrist. Without noticing, he releases a spider web that sticks to a plate of food. Pulling his hand so that no one would notice that the spider web came out of his hand, he accidentally threw all the food in a hooligan. Peter gets up and leaves, and behind him hangs the spider web with the plate. The hooligan followed him and started fighting with him. But Peter, with the help of a very good reaction and the power that came out of nowhere, was able to defeat the hooligan. Peter escapes from the school and realizes that he has acquired spider-like abilities from the spider bite. Peter quickly learns to scale walls, long jump across building rooftops, and swing using webs from his wrists. Lying to his Aunt May and Uncle Ben about where he is going, Peter decides to enter a wrestling tournament to get money to buy a car and impress Mary Jane. During an argument, Uncle Ben advises Peter, "With great power comes great responsibility." Peter lashes out at his uncle and leaves for the tournament. Peter stayed up all night and thought of a special suit for them to participate in the wrestling tournament. Peter looks in the ring and sees a big, strong man he has to fight. He sees how that strong and scary man wins another wrestling player. The boy goes out in the ring in his suit, which he did for one night. The fight begins. The man begins to attack Peter, but he, with the help of the new powers, escapes his attacks. The man catches him as a boy and lifts him into the air, throwing him down. The man takes an iron pipe to hit him, but Peter uses his feet to defeat that strong and scary man. Peter has won. Peter wins, but is cheated out of the contest money. In retaliation, he allows a thief to escape with the promoter's gate money. Afterward, Peter finds his uncle has been carjacked and killed. Angry Peter leaves behind the car stolen by the thief, who killed his uncle. He ends up fighting a thief and notices that he is the thief he was allowed to flee earlier. During the struggle, the carjacker falls out of a window and is killed. After that, Peter disappears so the police won't catch him. He gets home where he tells his Aunt May everything. He tells her that Uncle Ben was killed. Meanwhile, a crazed Norman ruins a military experiment by Oscorp's corporate rival called Quest Aerospace, destroying their prototype, killing several scientists and the military's general slogan. Peter and Harry graduate from high school. He takes graduation pictures. Aunt May congratulates him on graduating, as does Harry's father. After graduation, Peter decides to use his skills to fight injustice, that is, to fight thieves, all kinds of people who hurt the world, and for that he wears a new suit that he drew from the beginning, and now his nickname is Spider-Man. Peter is hired as a freelance photographer when he arrives in newspaper editor Jonah Jameson's office with the only clear images of Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Norman learns that during a meeting, members of Oscorp's board of directors plan to sell the company. Norman is furious. During a carnival in the city, Peter went out to take some interesting pictures for the newspaper where he worked. He notices a building where the members of the Oscorp Council are sitting. He sees Harry and Mary Jane talking. Harry tries to kiss Mary, but she won't let him do that. Peter is amazed at what he saw. After that, everyone notices something flying in the air. Norman was furious that board members decided to sell the company. He came to attack them at the World Unity Fair Festival. Norman, disguised in a green costume, is called the Green Goblin. He flies to the balcony where the council members sit and throw bombs there to destroy them. But there on the balcony was Mary Jane with Harry. Everyone is scared and starts running. The balcony begins to collapse. Mary Jane is hanging on a piece of the balcony that is almost falling apart. Peter takes off his Spider-Man costume and goes to the rescue. Spider-Man hits the Green Goblin, who falls on a balloon hut, and the flying disc hits a large balloon that breaks and falls on a child. Spider-Man notices this and goes to the rescue. He manages to save the boy. The Green Goblin gets up and starts fighting Spider-Man. Spider-Man is hit with enormous power, and the Green Goblin climbs on the flying disc and rises in the air, shooting the Spider-Man. Spider-Man rises into the air. The Goblin offers Spider-Man a place next to him, when he sees how the authorities do not trust him, but Spider-Man refuses. The Goblin commits arson to hire him with a final offer, which Spider-Man refuses, and the Goblin decides to kill him. Spider-Man destroys the cables on his flying disc, which fly in an uncontrollable direction. Spider-Man sees Mary Jane fall. He jumps after her and catches her, then lands with her on a building, telling her to take care another time, and leaves. Spider-Man saves Mary Jane in an alleyway from thugs. still unaware of Spider-Man's true identity, shares a passionate kiss with her savior upside down in the rain, making all her unspoken affection clear, kissing him full on the mouth for several long seconds. Peter, indescribably overjoyed that his lifelong live was doing this, acted likewise. She gave him a deep kiss on the lower lip with some tongue, and then gave his a small sweet kiss on the upper lip and ever so slowly pulled away, putting his mask back up, and he whisked away up the wall. The next day Spider-Man fights Goblin in a burning building and gets punched in the mouth and gets scratched on the arm by one of Goblin's weapons. At the Osborn and Parker's Thanksgiving dinner, Norman notices Peter's wound from the masked confrontation and leaves shortly thereafter. Feeling betrayed by Peter, and having found a personal annoyance with Aunt May, he attacks her. Whilst she recovers in the hospital, Mary Jane admits she has a crush on Spider-Man, who rescued her on numerous occasions, and asks Peter whether he ever asked about her. Peter reflects on his own feelings, during which Harry Osborn enters. Feeling betrayed by his girlfriend, Harry becomes fully loyal to his father, and tells him whom Peter loves the most. The Goblin strikes, holding Mary Jane and a tram car full of children hostage on top of the Queensboro Bridge. The Goblin tells Spider-Man to choose who he wants to save, and when Spider-Man refuses to choose, the Goblin drops his hostages. Spider-Man manages to save both Mary Jane and the tram car, whilst the Goblin is pelted at by civilians, showing loyalty to Spider-Man and proving him wrong by telling the Goblin that if you mess with him, you mess with New York. The Goblin then grabs Spider-Man and throws him into an abandoned building. Upon the Rocky arrival, Green Goblin throws a pumpkin bomb into the building, crossing near Spider-Man and eventually exploding, thus subsequently injuring him and weakening his spider senses. The Goblin then taunts him about how he denied their partnership before brutally beating on Spider-Man. Goblin savagely beats on him despite his efforts to strike back. Goblin gives extremely powerful punches to Spider-Man's mouth and cheek, giving him a jaw-jacking uppercut on the chin that sends him flying into the air and crashing into the ground, followed by more brutal punches to the face and a massive kick on the chest that sends Spider-Man flying into a wall. However, the tables turn as the Goblin boasts of how he will later kill Mary Jane slowly, and an enraged Spider-Man clobbers him to the point of taking off his mask, revealing his true identity. Norman begs for forgiveness, but his Goblin persona attempts to remote control his glider to impale Spider-Man. The superhero evades the attack, causing the glider to impale Norman instead, and he dies asking Peter not to reveal his secret to Harry. Harry walks in to see Spider-Man standing over his father's body. Harry seizes a gun, intent on shooting Spider-Man, but he quickly escapes and hides the Green Goblin's equipment. At Norman's funeral, Harry swears vengeance towards Spider-Man, who he believes is responsible for killing his father, and asserts that Peter is all he has left. Mary Jane confesses to Peter that she's in love with him. After exchanging a passionate kiss, Peter, feeling that he must protect her, hides his true feelings. As Peter leaves the funeral, he recalls Uncle Ben's words, "With great power, comes great responsibility." Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos of this kind. See you on the internet. Bye.